that and much more. One quick update before we go to Georgia Tech and their game with and their schedule for 2025. Tennessee ends Texas's run 83-72. UT most likely at 19-15, still in the tournament. It doesn't mean it's automatic, but they're absolutely like near the top of that bunch of teams that are trying to get in. But Tennessee wins 83-72. Craig Smoak.
Yeah, so it's time to take a look at the Georgia Tech football schedule as we go around all of the leagues. I don't know, are we just doing all power leagues? Have we decided that? Or are we just
I think we're just going to let it go.
Let's get to the power leagues.
We got about 60 days left with all the power schools.
Yeah, so we are reaching the midway point, I think, of the ACC now. We've already gone through the Big 12, and so today brings us to Atlanta, Georgia, and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jakcets, led by Brent Key and also quarterback Haynes King, although we saw their young quarterback play quite a bit last year as well. But I'd forgotten about this until I was just kind of looking around. But second-year coordinator Chris Winkie, formerly of Florida State, there's co-OC along with Buster Faulkner.
Heisman Trophy winner, baby.
Yep. Not a national champion, though.
Yes, he was.
Oh, yeah, he was.
1999.
Not in 2000.
Or 97 when he broke his neck. But he led the team to 3 different national championship games. So
yeah, that's nice.
He was one in. Well, he didn't play in 97.
Wouldn't you give
98.
anything to have him now?
I'd take him today, and he's
Georgia Tech.
50.
He'd make good NIL money probably,
Yeah.
but right now he's making pretty good money as co-OC at Georgia Tech. So the Yellow Jakcets, remember last year they started the season in Ireland with Florida State of all teams.
That was a great game.
Got off to a nice start there with the win, and they were a fun team. They finished 7-6, ended up losing in the Birmingham Bowl. But they were a very competitive team, very fun team to watch, and fell in the Birmingham Bowl to Vanderbilt. But now they're 0-0, and this is not a full season preview, as I will always remind you. It's just to look at the schedule, and we'll fill in some blanks over the next few months. But they have a hell of a schedule, I'll tell you. I don't know where it ranks if you actually take real metrics and not just like opinions. I don't know where it would rank computer-wise, but I would have to think it might be kind of up there with just some of the teams that jump off the page here, and that includes game number 1, right out of the gates, non-conference play, a Friday game to start the season for Georgia Tech, a road game to start the season for Georgia Tech, and a Big 12 opponent to start the season for Georgia Tech, as they will be playing Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes on Friday, August the 29th, the opener there for Georgia Tech. Then they will continue non-conference play the following Saturday against Gardner-Webb. And then the next Saturday, September the 13th, not the end of their non-conference schedule because the ACC does not play as many conference games as other leagues do. So they actually have the 4 non-conference games. But to close out this is a conference game, I'm tripping. The next one isn't. But on Saturday, September the 13th, they have a break in non-conference play as they will play the Clemson Tigers. They're in the opener to ACC action on Saturday, September the 13th. And it's the following week, Saturday, September the 20th, where they get the third of 4 non-conference games in. So that's a weird schedule. Like a Friday night, a second non-conference game, a conference game, another non-conference game, then about 6 conference games, and then a non-conference game to end the season is how it goes. But because of that, let's just stop there with that. Well, I guess I'll do one more. After Clemson, you get Temple in week 4 at home, that third of 4 non-conference games, and then Wake Forest to close out September and this first 5-week stretch before your bye week. Wake Forest on the road, and just their second road game in the first 5 weeks, and their first since that Colorado game in the very first week of the season. So at Colorado, Gardner-Webb, Clemson at home, Temple at home, at Wake Forest. There is your full August 29th through the month of September schedule, and then they get the first open week. So let's stop there.
Yeah, looking at their schedule too, they play almost all their games in Georgia and North Carolina, except the one in Colorado and the one in Massachusetts later. So they're in 2 states most of the season, which I think is kind of weird overall because they have a bunch of home games.
So why is it the SEC is the one that takes the bullets for playing only 8 conference games?
Great
and
question.
The ACC does too.
See, here's the deal. The ACC likes to hide behind that. But they are also...
They absolutely have been able to.
But they're also, let me see the word here is, chicken shit when it comes to their schedule. They should. And then they'll say like, oh, we all play one SEC team. Yeah, but you also play Gardner-Webb, and a bunch of you, Clemson, Florida State, stash a Wofford in right before your rivalry game. So cry me a river.
I'm apologizing to the SEC because they seem to take the brunt of any of this. They only play 8 conference games.
No, I mean, I think that's a legitimate, thing to point out because it's true. They get mentioned, but it's always like, oh yeah, and the ACC doesn't do it either. And then, but it's like, but Greg Sankey says that.
But see, the ACC also has been smarter in this argument in that when you say, why don't you do it? They don't go, because it's so hard. Yeah. The ACC just like, well, we don't.
Yeah.
Well, if you have non-conference games like Florida, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Georgia, that's something there. But everybody seems
but it's not.
Conference.
I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're splitting hairs. No. Yeah. So the ACC, everybody should go to 8 or everybody should go to 9.
Yeah,
Pick
I mean,
and that's
really,
fine.
dude.
Like, I don't care what it is. Just make it the same.
Yeah.
But these first few games are interesting. We'll get to know a lot about both the Colorado and Georgia Tech right off the bat there. So I like those where you can kind of see like, okay, this is who you are.
I mean, Colorado and Clemson.
So right off the bat, Colorado and Georgia Tech, like they're kind of in similar, well, not similar spots in that Georgia Tech has a lot more returning players. But Colorado, again, are you for real? Can you respond, repeat? If you're Georgia Tech, can you keep on this thing that Brent Key's been building of, hey, you're lethal now. You're scary. You can go beat teams. You can live at the top of the conference, and you'll get to test that out really early because you're going to play a really, really good Clemson team in the 3rd week of the season.
Yeah, I mean, at worst they should be. I mean, at worst you'd say 2-3. At best, you're looking at probably 4-1, I think is very feasible because I don't think Colorado's a loss guaranteed by any means, Boulder or elsewhere. I think the only game you look at and you go, they're probably not going to win that game is Clemson. But who the hell knows, week 3 of the season. But that's the game I would just say, like, yeah, that's the most likely loss. So at Colorado, Gardner-Webb and Clemson at home, Temple at home. So 3 in a row there in September, and then back on the road to close out the month at Wake Forest, and then your break. You come back on October the 11th, probably at like 3-2, 4-1 at that point. And if you're 5-0, then like holy cow, like you'll have a win over Clemson, you'll have a win at Colorado, you'll have gone to Wake Forest and won, so you're going to be in pretty good shape. But wherever they find themselves, they will be back on Saturday, October the 11th, at home against the Virginia Tech Hokies. That'll be followed by a road trip against Duke on Saturday, October the 18th, which should be another feisty team. Like, you start looking, I mean, I don't really know what to make of Virginia Tech just yet, but, I mean, Duke should be a little bit spicy. Syracuse with Fran Brown last year ought to be pretty spicy, and that's who they get following the Duke game, Saturday, October 25th. Syracuse and Fran Brown at home. Then one more game before their second bye week, which is Saturday, November the 1st, at NC State. So that is the second leg of their schedule. Home versus Vatech, at Duke, home versus Syracuse, at NC State. That's part 2. And what it breaks down to be a 5-4-3 schedule here, which is pretty.
That sounds like a double.
Average.
That's a double play. 5-4-3.
That middle 2 of that 4 is pretty tough. Duke, who I think most people think is going to be pretty good. Syracuse, year 2 under Fran Brown showed a lot last year. Did well in the portal. Replacing Kyle McCord who's going off. So we'll see. But this one. If they're 2-2 out of this 4, that would not shock me. Or if they're 4-0, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're going to be super competitive. So you can just coin flip, I think, a lot of these games based on what we do or do not know right now. So that is the second leg of the schedule. Then they come back on Saturday, November the 15th, and it'll be a road trip at Boston College. Then Saturday, November 22nd, it will be home versus Pittsburgh. And then the regular season finale And this one has actually been moved. So I looked at ESPN's calendar. They don't have this updated just yet. But last I looked, this has been moved to Black Friday. Georgia Tech will take place on Friday, November the 28th. And you see the correction there on their very own schedule there. It's their navy blue because it just got moved recently, I think. But, yeah, that is now scheduled to be a Black Friday game taking on Georgia. Neutral site, obviously, to close out the season. So a pair of Friday games. You'll have the neutral site with Georgia there at the very end. Outside of that, nothing too crazy unique. The 5-4-3 as far as the bye week breakdown goes there. Among the teams, before I get to the teams they will not be playing that are notable, that last stretch at BC, home versus Pitt, neutral versus Georgia. Any thoughts on that 3-game end to the regular season?
Well, Pitt and Georgia back-to-back with one less day to prepare for Georgia in the rivalry game's tough. I mean, like that and not to say that Boston College won't be a difficult one in Chestnut Hill this year.
ACC's actually got some interesting head coaches now.
They do.
Like Belichick and Bill O'Brien, and it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, and look, Brent Key is a guy on the rise, man.
Let me tell you something. That's a tough son of a bitch.
I
love the way he played.
Or was that Brent Pry that I'm thinking of?
Brent Pry.
Yeah, Brent Pry.
Yeah, Brent Pry is in a different spot.
Yeah,
like,
he's not.
He's in the.
We'll get to him.
He's in the. Maybe we like him, maybe we don't. We don't know yet. In Charlottesville is where Brent Key. They're like, where has this been for 20? Since. Johnston left, really. When they stopped with Paul Johnson, when they stopped running the wishbone, the triple option, or whatever they were running there. But yeah, Pitt and Georgia back to back. That appears to me right now to be really tough. And Georgia's going to be Georgia. I mean, we know that. Like how Georgia they'll be, I think always remains to be seen. With Gunnar Stockton taking over at quarterback and a lot of the losses they've had, but I mean they're a machine. And Pitt with Eli Holstein, that's scary.
Yeah, one of the notes about some of these games that I found interesting in kind of the summary of these was that the season opener at Colorado, first ever between the two teams, and they did split a national championship.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people would know that still.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech beat Nebraska in the bowl game to get their piece of it.
Yeah, so the 1990 national champions will square off for the first time ever, which I would never have guessed that. We just figured they would have crossed paths at some point. But, that's pretty cool. Also, the first regular season opponent from the Big 12 since Georgia Tech hosted KU in 2011. And before UCF fans go, whoa, wait, regular season opponent, because they did play UCF in the Gasparilla Bowl. Not this recent one, but the year prior. So, first regular season Big 12 opponent since 2011. And, there is the schedule, the 5-4-3 games against Colorado on the road to start things off with, and a neutral site against Georgia to close this. That's pretty nice bookmarks on the season. You get Clemson in what should be just a fun game. Road trips to Duke, road trips to NC State, road trip to Boston College, so and Colorado, obviously. So that'll be fun. Now, they do not play Notre Dame, just with the ACC potential matchups, but they also do not play Miami. They don't play Florida State. They don't play SMU. They don't play North Carolina. They don't play Louisville. And I think I can just stop there because that's a pretty significant chunk of teams that they are going to miss out on that are going to be potentially in the mix or should be absolutely be in the mix in the ACC. So, yeah, no Irish, no Canes, no Mustangs, no Heels. And I've mentioned them mostly just because of the Belichick factor of that we really don't know, but they're at least interesting for right now to talk about. And then, Louisville, who's always pretty good. So, they miss out on those. So, I don't know, a tough schedule, and yet when I run down who they're not playing, I feel like they kind of caught a break as well. It could be worse. You could have Miami on here, I guess, in place of a team.
The algorithm could have killed you.
Yeah, with their non-conference. I mean, having Georgia and Colorado on there, they really could have got dealt a blow. But I think it worked out overall pretty okay. It's a tough schedule, but definitely feel like you should be a bowl team. Beyond that, I don't know. Enough to have any sort of solid expectation, but I'm very excited to see what I hope is a healthy Haynes King this year because the dude's a player, and he was going through ungodly amounts of pain last year to be out there every weekend for the most part. So looking forward to watching him once again out there in Atlanta.
Georgia Tech and Colorado's uniforms that game when they play will be gorgeous. They're gold and white, and Georgia Tech's got a little navy blue in them sometimes, but those could be two good-looking jerseys when they open up that game in late August. The fact that they split the 1990 state championship, national championship, Colorado ended up beating Notre Dame 10-9 in the bowl game. And I believe it was it Rocket Ishmael who ran back a punt for a touchdown. It was called back because I think a block in the back. Georgia Tech mauled Nebraska like 45-21. That's back when you had a handful of years in the 90s when teams split national titles before where we are today. But those were two really good teams.